Good afternoon, folks. This is Robert Chappell, Executive Editor of Madison365, with your daily update for Thursday, April 15th. There's another really positive day at the Men's Leadership Summit. We just wrapped that up. It's a 2-day forum. The Women's Summit is coming up June 16th and 17th. You can register now at wisconsinleadershipsummit.com. The one last thing about that summit that I didn't mention, besides that, it was a fabulous day, and we will have all the sessions available on video probably by early next week if you want, if you missed it, or if you want to rewatch one of the panel discussions. They're all tremendously good and really unprecedented to have that many people of color in those roles, in that space doing that. But I do want to mention, we've mentioned most of the sponsors on here, but one more we got to add, and that's Exact Sciences, who came in as a supporter of the summit, and it was all these sponsors that really allowed us to make it free and to make the Women's Summit free also, to cover the costs and make it so that people didn't have to pay to come, which is great. And we appreciate that very much. I think what we'll do today, given that there's news that you might have heard about that I want to talk through out of Chicago, we will do the non-COVID news first. We'll talk through this. It's difficult. It's difficult, but we'll talk about the news, and then we'll do the COVID news, and we'll hear from David Crowley after the break. David is the county executive in Milwaukee County, and he's had some very intentional efforts to get vaccines into vulnerable populations. So that's a very good conversation that I had with him earlier today that I'll share with you after the break. Okay, so the thing out of Chicago that I want to talk about, you might be aware that police shot and killed 13-year-old Adam Toledo in March, at the end of March, a little over 2 weeks ago. And the civilian office of Police Accountability, released a body cam video today. Now, the prosecutor has said publicly in court that Adam Toledo had a gun in his hand when he was shot. The video very clearly shows that he did not. And I'm not going to show you the video, and I encourage you not to watch it. You don't need to see it. Lots of journalists have seen it, including myself. And Stephanie watched it with me as well, and just to talk through what exactly we saw in that video. So this is one instance where it's probably best if, just for your mental health, to trust us when we describe it to you, because I'm going to show you pictures. I'm going to show you one picture from it. And I already did. It's tremendously upsetting. It's tremendously difficult to watch. But this is a still capture that I got from the video. And you can pretty clearly see, and I've done the zoom in thing on it as close as I can. And that young man had nothing in his hands. What you can see in the video is that Adam was running away from the police. The police officer chased him and told him to stop. It does appear, based on this particular clip of the video, which is from the officer who shot him, as well as videos from other officers around, as well as statements from the police, that Adam had a handgun. And when the police told him to drop it, he dropped it. The police told him, "Let me see your hands." He basically approached this fence here and tossed the gun behind the fence, put his hands up and turned around. And the second that he turned around, he got shot in the chest. So he did run away from police. He did have a handgun. He was probably, in a not good, positive situation before police came. But he, as I said, he did run away, but he also stopped. He changed his mind. He complied. He was complying. He was doing exactly what the police officer told him to do when the police officer shot him. Now, Illinois is slightly different than Minnesota. Illinois has a police bill of rights. Illinois, and Chicago, and I do not anticipate prosecutors seriously considering charges against this police officer. It's been remarkable to watch what happened in Brooklyn Center, Minnesota, where you have a police officer negligently shoot somebody to death and is arrested 3 days later, versus Illinois, where it's already been 2 weeks and prosecutors have basically already said this was justified. It's possible that the Attorney General of Illinois, who has Kwame Raoul, who has advocated for police reforms in the relatively recent past, might try to bring a case or something, but we'll have to see. I would also anticipate significant protests in Chicago tonight, and we will be keeping an eye on those. If you can, as I said, I would recommend that you not watch the video. It's I don't know. There's not a lot of words for it. Okay, let's get to some other news and something that's not quite so disturbing. Real Talk with Henry Sanders is out this morning, and the guest is Dr. Shelton Good, who lived in Oshkosh for a couple of years. He was the chief diversity officer at Oshkosh Corporation and has since moved back to Atlanta and is now running his own DEI consulting business. And seriously, one of the smartest DEI people I've ever heard. And he talks a lot about, in this episode of Real Talk, talks about the skills that he learned in the Air Force, about, teamwork and working with a team of diverse people. Talks about working with Shaquille O'Neal, to help prepare the brand of Papa John's after the founder of Papa John's was caught using racial slurs. Really good conversation. A lot of really smart stuff, especially if you're in a business that is grappling with DEI. So it's on our site, Madison365.org/real talk. You can find it on our YouTube channel if you want the video version of it. If you want just the audio version, just wherever you get a podcast, you go and you search Real Talk with Henry Sanders. Also today on the site, we have a preview of this Saturday's CEOs of Tomorrow teen pitch event. CEOs of Tomorrow is a program where kids learn business skills, basically. As you know, my son did it last summer in the younger kid cohort, and the younger kids basically they get the program tells you here's your business, you just got to do it. So we spent a lot of time making gummy bears last year and selling them. But when you get older, when you get into middle school and into high school, you actually pitch your own business idea. And the picture here is Denali, who was the 2019 winner, and she's going to be the MC of the virtual event this Saturday. So that's going to be at noon. Go to the website, Madison365.org. You can get a link there if you want to tune into that and watch the next generation of entrepreneurs make their pitch. It's really pretty fun. Over in Minnesota, the prosecution of Derek Chauvin took 11 days and 38 witnesses. The defense took 2 days, I think 7 witnesses. Derek Chauvin chose not to testify. He invoked his rights under the Fifth Amendment against self-incrimination and will not take the stand. So now the court is going to take a couple of days off, and closing arguments are scheduled for Monday, and that'll take a day or two, and then the jury will have the case, and we will keep you informed as to what happens. Another fun story: Musical Theater of Madison, which is a local amateur semi-professional musical theater company. Has not done very much performing in the past year because of coronavirus, obviously. But they've put together this concept album called An American Mythology. I'm very excited about this. They're going to start releasing songs in a couple of weeks, like 2 at a time, digitally. And this is an anthology album of songs by composers of color, all people of color from Madison and Milwaukee. So local musicians put together this compilation album, and I am super excited about it. And we'll probably find a way to share some of the songs or something, or interview some of the artists. We just heard about this today, so but I definitely intend to interview some of the artists and do more on this. So their Metcalf's gets a free extra sponsorship. That's the non-COVID news today. As I said, it was just kind of heavy, so I wanted to get through that. We'll take a short break. We'll have a word from our sponsor, and I'll come back with a few minutes with David Crowley, and then we'll go over the COVID numbers, and that'll be that. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back right after this.
Here in the Midwest, community is important.
Having a healthcare system that's looking out for us,
that's actively addressing the racial disparities in healthcare is important.
When we can get good quality care, we can do more. We can achieve more.
we can be the kind of community we want to be, and that's really important.
UW Health. Remarkable medicine. Remarkable care.
And here's my conversation with David Crowley first, then we'll get to the COVID numbers for the day. And joining the program today, Milwaukee County Executive David Crowley. Thank you so much for being with us. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Thank you for having us, Rob.
All right. I really appreciate you giving us a few minutes. I know you're a very busy guy. So talk about what I want to talk to you about is this decision you made several weeks ago now to make all adults in 10 certain zip codes in the Milwaukee area eligible for vaccine. And can you talk about what led to that decision and why that was so important?
Absolutely, and great question, and thank you for having me.
Mm-hmm.
So on March 22nd, we know that anyone, particularly with a chronic health condition, was going to be made eligible to receive the COVID-19 vaccination. So we decided to partner up with the state as well as the city to take it a step further, really, honestly, to minimize the barriers that people have as it relates to receiving the vaccine. And when we think about those who have many of those barriers, we're talking about communities that have historically been underserved. So we're really thankful for the city of Milwaukee, Wisconsin DHS for really sharing this vision for equitable vaccine distribution. But when you look at the data, we made sure to track the data. When we were looking at who was receiving these vaccines and those who weren't, we were able to see that there were certain zip codes, certain areas throughout the Milwaukee County that have historically been underserved and historically been underserved in the healthcare fields. And so when you think about these 10 zip codes that we picked, there were the top 10 zip codes on the CDC's vulnerable index, most vulnerable index. And these are people who have many barriers to even receiving healthcare. It may be because of cost, it may be because of other prohibitive measures. But these were particular areas that we know that many individuals have issues as it relates to getting to a healthcare provider and receiving a diagnosis of any pre-existing conditions. And so many individuals in these zip codes may not have even known if they had a pre-existing condition or a chronic illness because they haven't had the ability to actually go see a doctor.
That's really fascinating. That's something I had not even thought of, that a lot of people who would have been eligible based on underlying conditions might not have been to the doctor for the last 5 years and not even know that they would be qualified because of an underlying condition. That's really fascinating. So talk a little bit more about who is it in these neighborhoods? Because these are, let's be frank about it, these are neighborhoods, zip codes with people of color are the majority of the population. Is that true?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the zip codes that we were focusing on, again, these are individuals who are at high risk of catching this disease and seeing some not the best outcomes. And so these were predominantly Black and brown neighborhoods, but we always had to make sure to be clear, especially being a person of color and the first one elected to this seat, that we aren't just focusing on people of color, even though that we know that they are concentrated in these neighborhoods, but anybody over the age of actually not even 18, 16, because if they were able to get the Pfizer, we wanted them to get that Pfizer. And so we knew that this was extremely important, particularly because we started tracking the different zip codes and the people by race who are actually receiving the vaccine. And we wanted to stay on track because we were one of the first jurisdictions in the country to even track testing in those who are contracting this virus by race. And so staying along those lines, when we're able to see the data, we're able to target many of our resources to those who aren't getting what they need. And this is along the lines of our mission and vision of achieving racial equity. And so for us, with us not having a health department, we wanted to utilize the data that we're collecting to help others make the best informed decisions as it relates to targeting particular communities and getting vaccinated.
So you said this a few times, that data is what's driving you, right? And driving these decisions. And so with that in mind, as you're making this decision to open eligibility for these zip codes and take other measures, what were the metrics for success? You know what I mean? Like, what numbers did you want? What data did you want to see to where you could say, like, yes, this was successful?
Well, we wanted to see.
Second part of that question is, did you meet those numbers? Was this successful so far?
Well, I don't have the numbers right off the bat, but what I can tell you is that once we opened it up to these 10 zip codes, as of earlier this week, we have administered over 10,000 vaccines across Milwaukee County. That's with our employees and with this zip code program. And when we employed this zip code program to be out there, we've seen about an 80% increase within these zip codes and within communities of color of getting vaccinated. And in reality, we always heard people talk about, the vaccine hesitancy, particularly in communities of color. But we can't talk about vaccine hesitancy if we're not going to give people direct access. And so that's why we stood up the Kosciuszko Community Center. And with the zip code program, in partnership with the city, we had 2 high schools, South Division as well as North Division, where folks in these zip codes did not have to schedule an appointment. They could come in, walk in, and stand in line to get themselves vaccinated. And we're slowly seeing success, but we know that there's more that we have to do. We're working with a community resilience team, grassroots organizations, internal and external partners to figure out how do we get more boots on the ground to be able to reach those hard to reach populations or those who still are looking for information and being able to give the information to them with trusted voices. So, I would say that it has been successful, but we know that we still have a long way to go in making sure that those who have been historically underrepresented and historically marginalized have access to this life-saving medicine.
And what you said is so important, that it's not just eligibility, it's also access, right? You got to make them eligible, but also get it to them and get them to where they can get the vaccine.
Absolutely. We always say, eligibility doesn't mean accessibility. Those are two different things. And there was a time, when so many folks were coming, but we now have vaccines. We now have the capacity to vaccinate as many people as possible that want to get this life-saving medicine. And that's what we're going to do.
Now, so is it true that hesitancy is really not a big concern for the populations you're seeing?
I would say that hesitancy is always going to be a concern when you think about us as a community, us as a nation, us as a society across this whole world. When we talk about trying to reach herd immunity and trying to get at least 80% of the population vaccinated. And so, I think that hesitancy is always going to be a question, but we shouldn't allow that to stop us from being able to get shots in the arms of people who absolutely need it. But we also know that this is a lot of education. When you think about Black and brown communities in historical context as it relates to healthcare policy or healthcare providers, we don't necessarily have the best history. And so it is important for us to make sure that we are educating not only our healthcare providers on why many people may be hesitant, but also educating the public about this life-saving vaccination, the efficacy and the safety of these vaccines. And listen, we have to make sure that we're giving this information because we want people to make the best decision for themselves and their families.
You said something else a bit ago that was really important too, that it's important for people to hear this in a voice that they trust. And so what are you doing for that? What are you doing to that end? Are you recruiting particular populations of health communications type folks, or talk a bit about that, please?
So that's what some of the first things that we did with our CARES dollars last year, particularly before the vaccine came. And when you think about just getting people tested, right? We needed people to go to whatever community site, go to their healthcare provider to get tested. And with this community resilience team, it is made up of both, again, internal and external partners, grassroots organizations who can reach many of these people at the grassroots level, literally boots on the ground. We've also created a We Care crew to work within our parks department and work with many different partnerships with our foundations, with our nonprofits, to really be able to give them the tools, whether we're talking about masks, whether we're talking about hand sanitizer, but also the information related to the COVID-19, how it spreads, and the best way to protect yourselves in this community. And again, as a person leading, county government, I know that not everybody is going to look at us for all the answers, but it's important for us that when we think about who needs to be at the table, that we have trusted voices, trusted faces at the table who can go into certain communities that they have the trust with and be able to have good dialogue and great conversations about why this is really important so people can make the best decision. So
what I kind of heard you say there, and just tell me if this is true, that you kind of mobilized a county response a year ago, probably, to get testing going and to help people understand the illness. But this vaccine effort is just kind of the next step of that.
Exactly. That is exactly it. And the reason is some people will say, well, you could be doing more, and we want to do more. But what's different for Milwaukee County here in the state of Wisconsin is that even though we are the largest and most diverse county in the state of Wisconsin, we are the only county that does not have a health department.
Right.
So we had to stand up a unified emergency operations center. We have 11 different health departments, public health departments across Milwaukee County, across all 19 municipalities. We brought in also our healthcare systems as well. So we can make sure that, one, we're on the same page, and when decisions are being made, we know what level they're being made at, and just also making sure that, we're all on the same page, because we want to make sure that we continue to have one county, one vision, and and the one mission that we are sharing at this very moment is making sure that we can get through this public health crisis.
Now, if you could speak, and maybe you do this, but if you could speak directly to people in those neighborhoods who are either thinking like, I'm not sure about this vaccine thing, I'm hearing all this stuff in the news about side effects and everything, or people who are just like, I want a vaccine, I just don't know where to go. Who do I call? What do I do? Like, what would you say to those people in in those neighborhoods?
Well, first and foremost, the questions that you are raising are very valid. And one thing I can tell you from my own personal experience is that I've already received my first shot, and I didn't experience any major side effects. I had just a sore arm, and actually on this upcoming Monday, I'm receiving my second shot. And so, for me and my family, we knew that this was the best decision for us to make, because if you've ever had COVID, that it's no joke. We have to do everything that we can to protect our elderly, protect those with chronic illnesses. And if you want more information, please go after it. But you have to make sure that you're researching with reputable websites. And I would highly recommend that you visit healthymke.com. And if you live in the Milwaukee County area, you can visit this website to schedule an appointment. But you can also visit this website if you live outside of the county to learn more information about the many different vaccines. And while folks may be hesitant or may want to see other folks go out there and get the shot first, just know that, with the millions of people that have received all of the doses, all of the different vaccines that are out there, we have not seen any major issues. And so even when you think about the Johnson & Johnson pause right now, that lets you know that the system is working to protect everybody out there. And even with that, we have to make sure that folks understand that we do still have 2 other vaccines out there. And it's not to say that the Johnson & Johnson vaccine isn't safe. They're just doing their due diligence and making sure that it won't do any harm to folks. So let's do our part in understanding that we all have a role to play in keeping each other safe. And I would say, and if anything, if you're vaccinated or not, please remember the 3 W's. And those 3 W's are: make sure to wash your hands, watch your distance, and wear your mask.
Milwaukee County Executive David Crowley, thank you so much for giving us the time today. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
Oh, hi. I've been looking at the spreadsheet and not at the comments. So I've been talking all the way through the spreadsheet and not noticing that you've all been telling me I'm muted. This is the worst COVID Zoom joke ever. The guy does 10 minutes of news on mute. Thank you for letting me know I was muted. I was about to wrap up and see if there were any last comments to get to. I came back over here and you're all very kindly telling me that I was muted and I wasn't paying attention. Okay, so let's go. I'll talk through the numbers again. I don't mind if you don't mind. Thank you for letting me know. Thank you for sticking with me. 943 is the number of new cases out of 5,900 tests. Not great. 3 deaths reported today. The average of deaths per day is down to 4, which is the lowest it's been. It's gotten that low a couple of times and then it's back up. So that's decent news. The news that I don't love, that's kind of a mixed bag actually, excuse me, is 3.8% of tests in the past 7 days have been positive. That's roughly the same as it's been. It's been between 3.7 and 3.8 for the last 9 days. So it's too high, right? It has to be, we really need it to be below 3.0. But the fact that it's stable and steady and not going up is, makes it not quite so bad. It's still not great. We're still at 809 new cases per day over the past 7 days. Our death toll is now 6,698. Active cases is also much higher, 9,200 active cases today. More than 1.5% of all the cases we've ever had currently active. I don't like that at all. I'd much rather see that going down. In vaccines, we've got 75,000 doses given in the past 24 hours, or at least reported in the past 24 hours. We are now averaging, as of today, I don't know why this average is down. 7-day average is now down to 48,000 doses per day. That was slightly higher before. It was 59,000 not too long ago. So I don't know why that is coming down. That's not encouraging. But we do have 25.8% of the entire state's adult population vaccinated. So that's good. That's half a point higher than it was yesterday. So that is continuing to accelerate, not only continuing to go forward quickly, but continuing to accelerate. So we should be able to get to, we should be able to get to 80% by the end of July if we keep getting the right supply and if people keep going to get vaccinated. So keep going to your appointments, right? If you don't have an appointment yet, find one. It's really, there are lots of options for you. I hope. Now, I'll also mention we have an update on variants today. And I am just now coming out, so I don't have a lot of context for you, except that the UK variant, a week ago, there were 148 cases that had been identified, and now there are 299. Not great. The B.1.351 variant, which is the South Africa variant, was at 15. It remains at 15. The California variant, which is the B.1.427, was at 216, is now 259. And the Brazil variant, there were 4, and now there are 11. Now, there have been about 400 cases sequenced in the past week to test for variants. So it's a lot. It's a relatively high percentage of those cases that were sequenced were some sort of variant, that's not great news at all. So we will continue to keep an eye on that and keep our fingers crossed that those variants don't really take hold. So thank you for watching me talk with no sound for 5 minutes. Thank you for sitting through the interview with David Crowley, which I thought was very important. And thank you for tuning in. Thank you for sharing this news. Thank you for hitting the share button on the video. I appreciate your support and your comments and your questions. And we'll be back tomorrow Tomorrow I'll be back to normal time, 4 p.m. right here on Facebook Live and YouTube and Twitter. Have a wonderful evening. We'll see you soon.
This is 365 Media.
Foreclosure after credit. We got on a list or something again.
Who is telling you otherwise?
The Zoomers people. Our plan is telling you otherwise.
Seriously, who is telling you otherwise? Like, you need a letter to prove it or something.
Okay.
Because it also said there's a court date. The other one said we had a court date.
Well, but they said that before, remember? Like,
yeah, and it turned out we were, and you had to fill out the paperwork. So don't tell me that it wasn't true last time, because it was true last time.
okay, I'll call them again.
Like, stop saying that it's not true. Because it was.
It was, but it's not now.
Huh.
But I'll get it ready, and I'll make sure that it's not.
I'm serious.
Yeah.
Like,
What was the court date?
I don't remember. I don't fucking remember. You told me to go with blah blah. Okay. You keep shaking your head no, but you also aren't truthful to me about stuff. So it's no, you're not. No, you're not. You are not. Don't lie to me right now. Really, you are completely truthful to me now.
What?
I don't know yet. I'm asking you. You're completely truthful to me now. You want to play? Careful.
I was just to tell you, I'm gonna go to the house.
It's not. I'm glad you want to be cute on things. It's not a cute thing. It's cute stuff.
No,